The ivory gown shimmered faintly under the soft light of dusk, every bead catching the glow like a captured star. Emma stood back to admire it, her heart swelling with pride and tenderness. The dress was her masterpiece, handmade over months of long nights, delicate patience, and pure love. Every stitch told a story, every thread carried a whisper of her dreams. It was not merely a gown. It was her future, her promise to Noah, the man who had shown her that kindness could feel like sunlight. Emma's small apartment room was filled with the scent of jasmine. A single flower lay pinned near the hem of the gown, her signature touch, a symbol of purity and eternal love. She smiled, brushing her fingers along the embroidery. "You're perfect," she whispered softly, as if the dress were alive. Tomorrow she would wear it to walk down the aisle toward a life she had always longed for. Her heart fluttered when she thought of Noah. He was gentle, patient, the kind of man who wrote notes instead of texts and brought flowers on rainy days. But where there was light, there was shadow, and that shadow had a name: Margaret, his mother. From the very beginning, Margaret had been polite in the way that feels like poison wrapped in honey. She complimented Emma's cooking, but always found a flaw. She smiled at her ring, but sighed at its simplicity. "You'll learn," she would often say, "that marriage is not all love and lace." Emma had tried to understand her, to love her even. After all, Margaret had raised Noah, the man she adored. So when the family tradition required the bride to spend the night before the wedding at the groom's family home, Emma didn't hesitate. She wanted to show respect, to be accepted, to start her new life right. When she arrived, Margaret greeted her with that same thin smile, eyes flicking to the garment bag Emma carried. "Your dress is in there," she asked, voice too sweet. "Yes," Emma replied proudly, "I made it myself." How ambitious. Margaret's eyes lingered on the bag as if it were something distasteful. Emma laughed nervously. "It means a lot to me, every stitch." That night, after dinner, Margaret stopped by her room. "Just wanted to say good night," she said, stepping inside. Her gaze immediately found the dress, hanging near the window, glowing faintly in the moonlight. "Quite a sight," she murmured. "You've put a lot into this." "I have," Emma said with a hopeful smile. Margaret's lips curled into something unreadable. "Well," she said, turning away, "let's hope it all goes smoothly tomorrow." When she left, the silence felt heavier than before. Emma tried to brush off the unease. She climbed into bed, whispering to herself about how wonderful tomorrow would be. She dreamed of music, vows, and laughter. But somewhere in the dark, in another room, Margaret sat awake, eyes glinting with something colder than jealousy, sharper than fear. And as the moonlight faded, the first embers of betrayal began to glow unseen. Morning sunlight crept gently through the curtains, painting the walls in warm gold. It was the day Emma had dreamed of since childhood, the day she would become Mrs. Emma Parker. She woke early, heart racing with excitement. The house was still quiet, the air scented faintly with brewed coffee and lavender soap. She slipped into her robe and padded toward the window, smiling at the garden below. The world felt soft, forgiving, full of promise, but something tugged at her senses. An odd, faint smell. Not coffee, not lavender, something heavier, burning. At first she dismissed it. Perhaps someone lit a candle too close to the curtains. Yet within seconds, the smell thickened, curling through the air like invisible claws. Her chest tightened. Then she heard it, a faint crackle, a pop. Emma's heart stuttered. She ran barefoot through the hallway, her robe trailing behind her like frightened wings. The scent grew stronger as she reached the back door, and there it was. The wedding dress, her dream, her creation, was ablaze in the backyard fire pit. Ivory fabric turned black, beads bursting in the heat, lace twisting into nothing. Smoke rose like a dark ghost into the sky, and standing beside it, calm and composed, was Margaret. For a moment Emma couldn't breathe. Her mind refused to accept what her eyes were seeing. Then reality slammed into her chest, stealing the air from her lungs. "No," she gasped, stumbling forward. "No, what are you doing?" Margaret didn't flinch. She simply watched the fire as if it were a mesmerizing show. "It caught fire," she said flatly. "You must have left it too close to the candles last night." Emma's voice cracked, raw with disbelief. "You're lying, how could you?" She fell to her knees near the fire pit, tears spilling as she tried to reach for what was left. The fabric disintegrated between her fingers. "This took me months, Margaret. You knew what it meant to me." Margaret turned her gaze down slowly, her expression unreadable, but her eyes glinting with something sharp. "It's just a dress, dear. If your love is real, it doesn't depend on silk and thread." Emma stared at her, trembling. "You wanted this. You wanted to ruin it. You hate me because I'm marrying your son." The older woman's lips curved faintly. "You'll never understand a mother's heart. You'll take him away from me. I won't let that happen." Before Emma could answer, the back door opened. Noah stepped out, confusion in his eyes. "What's going on? Why are you both shouting?" Emma turned to him, desperate. "She burned my dress, Noah. She did it on purpose." Margaret immediately pressed a hand to her chest, feigning shock. "Emma, how could you say that? It was an accident. I was trying to clean the yard for the wedding, and the fabric must have fallen in." "No," as eyes darted between them, torn. "Mom, Emma," his voice faltered. Emma waited for him to defend her, to stand beside her, but he didn't. He looked away, silent. Something inside her broke. Margaret exhaled slowly, almost satisfied, as Emma stood frozen, watching her future turn to ashes before her eyes. The wind carried the last shreds of the gown into the air like white ghosts, scattering her dreams across the ground. And somewhere deep inside, love began to burn into something else entirely. The smell of smoke clung to her skin for days, as if it refused to let her forget. No matter how many showers she took, how many times she changed her clothes, it lingered, a cruel reminder of what had been taken from her. The wedding never happened. By noon that day, guests had been told the ceremony was postponed due to an unforeseen accident. Emma couldn't even bring herself to leave her room. Her phone buzzed endlessly. Calls, messages, pity-filled texts. "Are you okay? What happened?" She ignored them all. What could she possibly say? That her future mother-in-law had burned her wedding dress to stop the marriage, and that the man she loved had stood there, silent. Noah came to see her 2 days later. He stood awkwardly in her doorway, his eyes filled with guilt, his hands empty. "Mom didn't mean for it to happen," he said softly. "She's been crying since that morning. She says it was all a terrible accident." Emma laughed bitterly. "Of course she does." Her voice cracked. "And you believe her, don't you?" He hesitated just a second, but it was enough. Emma's heart shattered all over again. "I don't know what to believe," he admitted, voice trembling. "But please don't make me choose between you and my mother." Those words were her answer. He had already chosen. After he left, the silence felt heavier than ever. The house that was once meant to be her new home now felt like a graveyard of dreams. By the end of the week, Emma packed her things and moved back to her small apartment in the city. She folded what was left of the gown, just a few unburned fragments, and placed them in a small box. She couldn't throw them away, not yet. Days bled into weeks. The gossip didn't fade. People whispered about her behind polite smiles. "Such a shame," they said. "Poor girl." Emma stopped answering calls. She stopped eating properly. Even her reflection looked like a stranger, eyes dull, lips colorless. Then one morning, she sat in front of her sewing machine and stared at the untouched fabric rolls stacked in the corner. Her hands itched, something deep within her. An ember that refused to die began to glow again. She started to sew. Slowly at first, clumsy from disuse, but soon her movements became steady, confident. Thread by thread, she poured herself into her craft. Every tear she had shed, every insult she had endured, every ounce of heartbreak, she stitched it all into the fabric. Weeks later, a new dress emerged, not white, but a breathtaking blend of ivory and gold, with embroidered flames that rose along the skirt. She named it the Phoenix. It wasn't just a gown, it was a declaration that she would not be defined by ashes. When she finished, she stood before it with tears in her eyes. The fire that once destroyed her had now become her muse. And for the first time in months, Emma smiled not with the softness of a bride, but with the strength of a woman reborn. Of course, read here's the final part, Chapter 4, The Sweetest Revenge. Written in about 540 words, bringing Emma's journey to a powerful, emotional close filled with poetic justice and peace. Chapter 4, The Sweetest Revenge. Months passed, and the world turned quietly while Emma rebuilt herself piece by piece. The pain never vanished completely. It lived in her like a scar, but one that no longer bled. She had poured her soul into her work, and her small apartment had transformed into a studio filled with fabrics, sketches, and laughter once again. Word of her designs began to spread. Friends shared her photos online, brides admired her courage, and soon she was flooded with orders. Every gown she made carried a story of strength, hope, and rebirth. But her greatest creation remained the Phoenix, a shimmering ivory and gold gown that seemed to glow with its own light. It was more than fashion, it was her forgiveness stitched in silk. One day, an email arrived that made her heart skip. A renowned designer, Clara Duval, had seen Emma's work online and wanted to feature her in a major bridal showcase in the city. "Your designs speak of resilience," Clara wrote. "I want the world to see them." Emma said yes. As the day of the showcase approached, excitement buzzed through her veins. She didn't know who might attend. She didn't care. This was her new beginning, but fate, with its quiet sense of irony, had its own plans. Among the glittering crowd that evening sat two familiar faces, Noah and Margaret. They had been invited by a mutual acquaintance who had no idea of their past with Emma. Margaret looked older, thinner, her proud posture replaced with unease. Noah looked tired, shadows in his once kind eyes. Neither knew that the young designer they had come to see was the woman they had broken. The lights dimmed. Music began to play. One by one, models stepped onto the runway, draped in Emma's Creations gowns of grace and power, each more beautiful than the last. The audience whispered in awe, and then came the finale. The curtains parted and the Phoenix appeared. The gown shimmered under the spotlight, its golden embroidery flickering like living flame. The crowd gasped. Cameras flashed. It was beauty resurrected. Then Emma walked out, elegant, calm, radiant in a simple black dress. She bowed beside her model. And in that moment, the entire room recognized her, the woman whose wedding had turned into ashes, now reborn as a star. Margaret's breath caught in her throat. Noah's eyes widened with disbelief and regret. Emma lifted the microphone, her voice steady. "This collection is for anyone who's ever had their dreams destroyed," she said softly. "Sometimes the fire that burns us also lights the way forward." Applause thundered through the hall. Margaret lowered her gaze, shame heavy in her heart. Noah tried to approach her afterward, but Emma only smiled. A smile neither bitter nor forgiving, simply free. "You were right about one thing," she told him gently. "It was never about the dress." Then she turned away, leaving him in silence. As she stepped outside into the cool night, the city lights shimmered like embers in the distance. The air smelled not of smoke, but of new beginnings. And for the first time, Emma realized her sweetest revenge wasn't in proving them wrong. It was in rising, glowing, and walking away stronger than ever.